There are moments in life so ridiculous, they feel scripted. Like the universe is trying out its stand-up routine on you, and you're the punchline. Mine came on a regular Tuesday night, while I was holding a mug of instant ramen and watching our kitchen light flicker like it owed someone money. "Dad," I said casually, leaning on the counter, "did the electric bill get paid?" "The lights keep." He didn't even flinch. Just kept flipping channels like he was searching for a version of reality where he didn't have a 22-year-old son asking logical questions. "You pay for yourself now," he snapped, waving a hand like I was interrupting his sacred evening ritual of falling asleep to sports highlights. No context. No discussion. Just the emotional depth of a fortune cookie, delivered by a man who once grounded me for using the dryer too loud. I stood there, still holding the mug, wondering if that sentence had a hidden meaning. Maybe it was metaphorical. Maybe it meant I should finally take charge of my life, stand tall, forge a new path. Nah. It meant exactly what it sounded like. Dad logic didn't run deep. It ran petty. The kicker? The electric bill was in my name. Had been for almost 4 years, ever since Dad decided. "You're an adult now," meant, handle the bills and don't ask questions. Back then, I was just excited to have a little responsibility. Felt grown up. Important. Until responsibility turned into a one-sided game of financial Jenga. At first, he paid me back. Occasionally. Then it became, "I'll get you next week." Then, "You live here too, don't you?" And eventually, nothing. Just me, paying bills for a man who thought budgeting meant turning off lights during commercials. I went to my room, or as Dad liked to call it, the storage space that happens to have a bed in it, and sat on the edge of my mattress, chewing cold noodles and staring at a ceiling that still had water stains from the last storm. That was when I made the call. Not to him. To the electric company. "Hi, yeah," I told the woman on the line. "I want to cancel my account. Effective immediately. Do you want to transfer it to someone else's name?" She asked, as if she'd seen this play out 1,000 times. "Nope," I said. "Let it die." She paused. "You understand that means service will stop unless someone else." "That's exactly what I want." That night, I slept weirdly well. Maybe it was the power of quiet rebellion. Or maybe I was just exhausted from 3 years of feeling like a walking ATM with a pulse. The next day, I started looking for places. Couldn't afford a real apartment, not on my grocery stock or paycheck. But I found a room above a mechanic shop on Craigslist. Said it. Smelled like tires but had soul. Sold. The landlord, Vinny, was an older guy with a mullet and a leather vest that had definitely seen a bar fight. But he was kind. Offered me a fridge, a key, and a warning. "Watch out for raccoons on the fire escape. They're mean this year." By Sunday, I was packed. Not a big move, just 2 duffels, a toolbox, and a mattress I rolled like a burrito. I left a note on the fridge that said, "You said I pay for myself now. So I will, just somewhere else." Did he read it? Probably. Did he call? Not a word. The first night in the new place, I cracked open a gas station soda, sat on the floor, and stared out the tiny window above the garage. The view wasn't much, mostly a dumpster and a broken streetlight. But it was mine. And it wasn't flickering. Vinny popped in around 10 p.m. with a bowl of leftover lasagna and said, "You look like someone who just escaped something." Then walked away without another word. Bless that man. And just like that, I had something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. No tiptoeing. No guilt tripping. No unpaid bills hanging over me like ghosts with calculators. Of course, I knew it couldn't last. Not because of me, but because Dad wasn't going to notice until something physically didn't work. Like the lights. But that part? That storm? It hadn't hit yet. It was coming though. And I was finally in a place where I didn't have to care. There's something poetic about the universe waiting until you feel a moment of peace before it reminds you where you came from. Like it doesn't want you getting too comfortable without tossing a little chaos your way, just to keep things interesting. It had been 5 days since I moved out. 5 glorious, quiet, Power stable days. No one yelling from the living room about kids these days. No news anchors screaming in the background. No random passive-aggressive comments about how I never mowed the lawn quite like your uncle used to. Just me, my creaky bed above Vinny's shop, and a mini fridge stocked with frozen taquitos and emotional clarity. Vinny had even taught me how to use the espresso machine downstairs. Said every mechanic needs caffeine and spite to survive. I didn't know much about cars, but I knew Spite, deeply and personally. We bonded. The thing is, I didn't miss the old house. I missed the idea of it, the fantasy that maybe, one day, Dad would walk into the kitchen and say something like, "Hey, thanks for keeping things together." But I'd long since filed that dream under things less likely than aliens doing my taxes. So when the storm rolled in that Thursday night, I was curled up watching TV on my laptop, feet wrapped in a blanket Vinny's wife had crocheted for whoever's sleeping upstairs. The thunder started soft, one of those slow, rumbling growls like the sky was waking up cranky. Then came the flashes of lightning, bright enough to backlight the mechanic shop sign out front. I glanced outside and winced. The kind of downpour that made gutters cry for help. The kind that you could hear over your thoughts. But I wasn't worried. My lights didn't flicker. My power didn't blink. Because unlike some people, I had paid my damn bill. I was halfway through an episode of a cooking show where someone had just undercooked a lamb shank when my phone buzzed. Dad. Calling. Which was funny, because I couldn't remember the last time he'd called for anything other than to ask why the Wi-Fi looked broken. I let it go to voicemail. Then it buzzed again. Another call. Then another. By the fourth, I hit decline out of curiosity more than spite. The fifth came through before I could even put the phone down. This time I answered. Yeah? What the hell did you do? He snapped, skipping past hello like it was a luxury. Define do, I said calmly. The power's out. I called the company. They said the account's closed. Oh, I said. Yeah. I closed it. Silence. You what? Closed it, I repeated, casually biting into a taquito. You said I pay for myself now. So I stopped paying for you. You didn't think to warn me? You didn't think to stop yelling long enough to listen? I shot back. Fair's fair. There was this strangled sort of noise on his end. The sound of a man trying to argue with facts while wet socks sloshed around his kitchen tile. It's pouring. The basement's flooding. I can't even see down the damn stairs. Yeah, I muttered, glancing out the window. Storm's nasty. Hope you've got flashlights. I don't, he yelled. Why would you do this to your own father? And there it was. The guilt card. Crisp. Laminated. Pulled from the deck like it hadn't already been overplayed for years. I didn't do anything to you, I said. I just stopped doing everything for you. More silence. The kind that always came when logic hit him harder than lightning ever could. You're punishing me. I'm living somewhere with electricity, I replied. If that feels like punishment, maybe that's not on me. He hung up. No goodbye. No resolution. Just the sound of thunder rolling through the line before it cut out. I stared at my screen for a second, then tossed my phone onto the blanket and leaned back against the wall. Vinny knocked once, then poked his head in. You okay? I nodded. Yeah. Just a small storm. He grinned. Storms come and go, kid. Good insulation? That stays. The man had a quote for everything. Downstairs, the power tools hummed. Upstairs, I felt something unshakable for the first time in years. Not freedom. Not relief. Just light. And the knowledge that someone else, somewhere not too far away, was finally sitting in the dark. The next morning, I woke up to a string of texts that read like someone trying to negotiate with a vending machine. 7:12 a.m. You made your point. 7:15 a.m. I talked to customer service. 7:17 a.m. They said you have to reopen it. 7:19 a.m. Come on, son. 7:21 a.m. I'll pay you back. 7:28 a.m. Seriously, The freezer's leaking now. 7:32 a.m. This is childish. By 8 a.m., I had officially been called both immature and in charge of utilities, which is peak dad energy, contradicting himself before breakfast. I didn't reply. Not out of spite. Just strategy. I'd learned that silence, in our family, spoke louder than facts. Vinny knocked on the ceiling with a broom, his version of, "You up?" I headed downstairs, helped him open the shop, and quietly counted my blessings that none of our tools needed power from my name to work. By noon, my dad had taken matters into his own hands. And by that, I mean he made the least practical decision possible. He bought a generator. A used one. Off Facebook Marketplace. From a guy named Tony T., whose profile picture was a blurry photo of a jet ski in someone else's driveway. I found this out from my cousin Beth, who still lived a few blocks over. She texted me. "Your dad's out front with a rusty generator and a 100-foot extension cord. Says he's gonna win this." "Win what?" I asked. "The power struggle," she replied. I actually laughed. Loud enough that Vinny poked his head out of the back room with a raised eyebrow. "Someone finally invent sarcasm in text form?" "Close," I said. "My dad's running a house on the power of ego and gasoline." By dinner time, the text had shifted. "Do you know anything about generators? It smells like burning rubber. The neighbors are complaining. The extension cord melted. Do you still have that fire extinguisher?" That last one felt urgent. I debated answering. Instead, I texted Beth. "Has the house burned down?" She replied with a picture of Dad standing in the driveway, arms crossed, a plume of gray smoke behind him, and what appeared to be a raccoon on the porch, looking unimpressed. I screenshotted it. For legal reasons and also personal satisfaction. Later that night, he called. Again. This time, he opened with, "Okay, maybe we got off on the wrong foot." I sat on the floor, laptop in my lap, snack in hand, letting the phrase marinate. "You mean after you kicked the foot carrying the electric bill out the door?" I said. He sighed. "Look, maybe I was too harsh. But I didn't think you'd actually go through with it. That's the thing, Dad. You never think I'll go through with anything." Silence. Then, quietly, "The power company says they won't restart service unless the outstanding balance is paid in full." I waited. "And?" I prompted. "And it's kinda high," he admitted. "Late fees and all." I knew how high. It was 3 months' worth of ignored payments plus penalties. I'd seen the statements before I closed the account. The bill had my name, but his usage, a metaphor for our entire relationship, really. He cleared his throat. "If you could just call them. Restart the account. I'll handle it after." "No. Son. No," I repeated, firmer this time. "You told me I pay for myself now. So that's what I'm doing. Only for myself. But this is your home." "No, Dad," I said. "It was my house. Not my home." He didn't say anything after that. Just hung up. No goodbye. No apology. Just the sound of someone losing control of a system they never thought would push back. I turned off my phone, climbed into bed, and stared at the ceiling, where a water stain used to be in my old room, slowly growing, quietly ignored. But here? Nothing dripped. No flickers. No guilt. Just quiet. And power. It took exactly 2 days of generator fumes and melted extension cords for Dad to realize brute force wasn't going to bring back his cozy, light-filled kingdom. So naturally, he did what any emotionally constipated father would do. He called in Aunt Marlene. Now, to understand the significance of this move, you have to understand who Marlene is. She's the eldest of my dad's 4 sisters. The one who still sends out mass emails with subject lines like, "Inspirational wisdom dizzy," and attachments that haven't opened properly since 2007. Her house smells like potpourri and ambition. And she's always believed that every family disagreement can be solved with a firm voice, baked goods, and completely ignoring the root issue. When she called, I knew immediately why. "Sweetheart," she started, dragging out the syllables like molasses. Your father's been having a really hard time. Yeah, I said flatly. I heard. The power struggle's not going well. You shouldn't joke about serious things, honey. I'm not joking. He tried to run the house off a $90 generator and set his porch light on fire. She cleared her throat like I just cursed in church. Regardless of electrical mishaps, he's still your father. I let that one float in the air for a second. That word still. As if being my dad automatically absolved him of years of small, silent cruelties. He's also still a grown adult, I said. One who told me to pay for myself. So I did. But you know he didn't mean it like that. How did he mean it then? She stumbled. Well, sometimes people say things in the heat of the moment. This wasn't heat of the moment, I replied. It was lukewarm indifference. That's his specialty. Silence. Then, in her best diplomatic tone, maybe it's time to be the bigger person. Ah, yes. The classic family maneuver. Be the bigger person. AKA, pretend it never happened and let us avoid feeling awkward at Thanksgiving. Marlene, I said, did he even tell you what started this? There was a pause. He said you got angry about a bill? A bill in my name, I clarified. That I was paying. For his house. And when I asked him if he was going to cover it, he told me to pay for myself. More silence. I imagined her eyes narrowing, her hand clutching a doily in frustration. Well, she said at last, you've made your point. You've moved out. You're independent now. So maybe it's time to stop punishing him. Punishing him? I repeated. You mean, living my life with working electricity? You know what I mean. I did. She meant, come fix this. Make it easier. Be convenient again. I didn't yell. Didn't cry. Just said, I'm not coming back. And I'm not turning anything on. Her voice softened. He's lonely, you know. So was I said. For a long time. But nobody called you when I was eating canned soup in the dark. She hung up not long after that. Didn't yell either. Just sighed. Like I had disappointed her by daring to have boundaries. Later that night I got a text from my cousin Beth. Just saw your dad at Home Depot. He bought 3 battery lanterns and a pack of Vienna sausages. I replied. A man prepared for both darkness and sodium. The next morning, I found a voicemail from Dad. Not a new one, an old one. One I'd forgotten I saved from over a year ago. I don't even remember what it was about. Probably telling me to bring home milk or turn off the hallway light. But in the background, I could hear myself, laughing at something. Probably a dumb joke. One of the few moments when we didn't feel like two people quietly disappointing each other. I didn't delete it. Didn't reply either. Just sat there, phone in hand, knowing the difference between missing someone and missing who they never really were. Vinny knocked later, holding up a broken carburetor like it was a trophy. Ready to earn your keep? I grinned. Only if you teach me what that thing does. He winked. Step 1. It doesn't pay for your dad's light bill. Fair enough. 2 days after Aunt Marlene's visit to the Guild battlefield, I got a text from Dad. No greeting. No punctuation. You working tomorrow? I stared at it for a solid minute, sipping instant coffee and wondering if this was his version of a peace offering. Not. How are you? Not. Can we talk? Just a low-effort weather check on my schedule. I didn't respond. I knew this game. I'd seen him play it with old friends, coworkers, even Mom. He didn't say sorry. He said, "You free to help me with something," and hoped the doing would patch what the words never could. The next day, around noon, I got another message. Want to come by and pick up the tools you left in the garage? That one almost got me. The tools he meant were mine, a birthday gift from my grandpa before he passed. Real ones. Heavy, solid, full of purpose. They'd sat in that garage for years, untouched by Dad but oddly respected. Like he knew better than to mess with something that wasn't his. Or maybe just didn't know how to use them. I asked Vinny if I could take the afternoon off to run in. errand that might emotionally punch me in the face. He handed me a can of oil and said, "Just don't punch back." Not yet. When I pulled into the old driveway, it felt smaller. The siding more chipped. The lawn more yellow. Like it was decaying in slow motion now that it didn't have anyone to resent inside it. Dad was sitting on the porch with a camping lantern next to him, flipping through a weathered magazine. I parked and walked up, heart pounding harder than I cared to admit. He looked up. Squinted like I was the son and not his son. "Didn't think you'd come," he said, voice half gravel, half pride swallow. I shrugged. "Didn't think you'd ask?" He gestured toward the garage. "I didn't touch your stuff." "Thanks," I said, trying not to make eye contact. We stood there for a few beats. Awkward silence swelling like a balloon. Finally, he said, "The place is quiet without you." "Probably quieter with the power out," I replied. He snorted. Just once. That familiar half laugh that meant he didn't want to admit I was funny. "I've been thinking," he said. Dangerous sentence. "Maybe I shouldn't have said what I said." "Which part?" I asked. "The pay for yourself or the part where you let me cover your bills for years without blinking?" He scratched the back of his neck like he just remembered it was attached to guilt. I figured you didn't mind." "I didn't," I said. "At first. I thought it was temporary. Then I realized temporary was just your favorite word for forever until someone complains." He winced. "I'm not good at this." "No kidding." More silence. He looked down at his boots. "You were always good at figuring stuff out," he mumbled. "And you were always good at assuming I'd keep doing it." He nodded. Not defensive. Just small. Shrinking into himself in a way I'd never seen. "I'm trying," he finally said. I let the sentence hang. Trying. Trying to acknowledge, not apologize. Trying to be better, not say he was wrong. Trying not to lose the only person who kept the lights on, literally and emotionally, for years. I walked into the garage. The tools were right where I left them. Untouched. Even the cloth I'd wrapped the ratchet set in was still there. I picked up the box, heavier than I remembered, and turned to go. "Hey," he said from behind me. "If I get the power turned back on, maybe you could come by sometime. Just for dinner." I didn't turn around. "Maybe," I said. "If you learn how to pay the bill." Back in the car, I set the toolbox down like it was a trophy. Because in a weird way, it was. Proof that I could come back without staying. Listen without forgiving. See him, not as a villain, not as a victim, but as a man stuck in his own blueprint. And me? I'd redrawn mine. It was a week later when Beth texted me 3 simple words. The lights returned. I almost choked on my cereal. She followed up with a photo of Dad's house, porch lit up like a Christmas movie, or at least a local news segment about finally paying your overdue electric bill. The caption? "Guess who finally called customer service?" I didn't answer right away. Mostly because I didn't know how to feel. Part of me expected him to cave. Another part expected a generator to explode before that ever happened. But a third part, the quieter, more skeptical one, wondered what strings had been pulled. Because Dad, historically, didn't fix things. He either duct taped them or blamed someone else. Sure enough, later that afternoon my phone buzzed. "Power's back on." "No." "Hi." "No. Just wanted you to know." Just facts. Like he was reading me the weather. I replied with a thumbs up. Then came the follow-up. "You want to come by for dinner Sunday?" And there it was. The bait. Vinny caught me rereading the message like it was written in another language. He slid a plate of lasagna across the workbench and said, "You gonna decode that, or just stare it into submission?" I told him everything. The text. The power. The invitation. He wiped his hands on a rag and leaned back. "Guilt dinner," he said. "Classic. You think I should go? You think you want to go?" That was the better question. And I didn't have an answer right away. Because some small, outdated part of me still craved that table. The one with the lopsided leg, the mismatched chairs, the seat I always took without being told, like it was mine, even when I wasn't sure the house was. So yeah? Sunday night I went. Dressed decent. Nothing flashy. Just clean jeans and a good hoodie. The one without paint splatters. When I pulled into the driveway, the porch light clicked on automatically. That motion sensor hadn't worked in years. I stood under it for a second, like it was checking to see if I still belong. Dad opened the door. Didn't smile. Didn't frown. Just stepped aside and said, "Stew's on the stove." I walked in. The house smelled like onions and forced peace. The living room was mostly unchanged. Same recliner, same off-balance coffee table, same TV paused mid-football commentary. But the silence was new. Heavy. Measured. We ate quietly. Dad stirred his stew like it held answers at the bottom. I picked at mine and tried not to let my eyes scan every room, counting shadows like a security system. Halfway through the meal, he cleared his throat. I paid the bill. I noticed. I set up autopay. That part was new. Good, I said. I also put it in my name. I paused. That honestly surprised me. It was overdue, he said. Long overdue. We weren't talking about the bill anymore. You did it, I said. That's what matters. He nodded. Silence again. Longer this time. Then, almost too casually, he asked, "So you staying long?" "No," I said gently. "I've got work tomorrow." Another nod. Like he'd rehearsed the disappointment already. I stood to leave, grabbed my coat, and turned at the door. "Thanks for dinner," I said. He nodded again. As I stepped out onto the porch, the light clicked off behind me, motion sensor doing its job, shutting out what it didn't detect anymore. And that's when I realized. He might have turned the lights back on. But the home part? Still dark. A week passed after the dinner. No follow-ups. No guilt texts. No "thinking of you" voicemails. It was almost peaceful. Like the power coming back on had reset Dad's personality, or at least short-circuited his usual pattern of emotional neglect. But I wasn't naive. I knew better than to think one meal and a paid bill meant the foundation had healed. It was like putting a new roof on a house with cracked plumbing. Looks good from the street, but wait till the pressure builds. Vinny noticed I'd been quiet. "You get your closure or just indigestion?" he asked one morning, sliding me a greasy sandwich while we changed brake pads. "Little bit of both," I muttered. He nodded. "You gonna keep going back?" I shrugged. "I don't know. I think part of me wanted it to feel like before." "And did it?" "No," I said. "It felt like a reboot of something that wasn't great the first time." Later that day, I stopped by the post office to check the mailbox I'd opened after moving out. Just in case. Among junk flyers and an invitation to a local mechanics conference, Vinny would be thrilled, I found an envelope with my name scrawled in my dad's handwriting. No return address. Inside? A receipt. From the electric company. One payment. Full balance. Paid in cash. And on the back, in all caps, "I paid for myself." I stared at it for a while, standing by the wall of mailboxes, unsure whether to laugh, cry, or throw it into the recycling bin just to be poetic. It wasn't an apology. Not even close. But it was the closest thing I'd ever gotten. That night, I pinned the receipt on the corkboard above my desk. Right between a photo of me and Vinny holding up a half-dead carburetor and a takeout menu from the diner with the weirdly good lemon pie. I didn't text him. Didn't call. Just let it sit. 2 days later, my cousin Beth dropped another update. "Your dad installed solar panels." I stared at her text for a minute like she'd sent me a riddle. "What?" "No clue. Said he's tired of the system." Classic. So now he was not only independent, he was a rebel. The next weekend, I got another message from Aunt Marlene. This one was surprisingly short. "Just so you know, your father brought a lasagna to church. And he told the pastor he made it himself." "Did he?" "Absolutely not." I watched him microwave it in the parking lot. Okay, that one did make me laugh. But the part that stuck with me was what she said after. He asked for prayers? For family healing. That night, as I lay in bed, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I felt like someone finally off the hook. Not just from the electric bill, but from the expectation that I had to fix everything. I had paid my dues. And for once, he had too. Not perfectly. Not with grace. But enough. And that receipt? That was the last unpaid invoice between us. A week later, I stopped by Vinny's after work and found him tinkering with a busted power drill. He glanced up, then pointed at the corkboard behind me. That thing, he said. You gonna frame it or burn it? I turned to look. The receipt. Still pinned, still smirking at me in all caps, I paid for myself. I smirked back. Nah. It can stay. He shrugged. Better than a Hallmark card. That night, I walked home a little slower. Not because I was tired, just thinking. Thinking about the years I kept the lights on without anyone noticing. Thinking about how it only took one storm, one cutoff, for them to finally see what darkness looked like without me. When I reached my apartment, I clicked on the light switch by the door. Bright. Immediate. Reliable. Paid in full. And just before heading to bed, I sent my dad one last message. No anger. No sarcasm. Just one line. Now you know what it takes to keep the lights on. Then I turned off mine. And slept like someone whose name was finally only on his bills.